The Tao of Self-Confidence, Episode 823. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. Well, hello, friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap-Chan, and today I have another amazing Asian woman who Boss Up co-author. Now, this woman is a culinary blogger and also a cookbook author. So if you are looking for some delicious recipes, you should check out her cookbook. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Samantha Mui. Samantha, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sheena, for having me today. I am what you said, a culinary blogger and a cookbook author. I recently launched my book during the pandemic, shortly after the pandemic. It's called Melting Pot. And Melting Pot is basically a collection of stories that talks about a lot about my Asian American experiences tied with food, because I do believe that food brings everyone together.
I love it. And as Asian people, we love our food. So anyone who wants to check out new recipes, go check out her book. And Samantha, what's your cultural background?
Yes, I am Chinese. So my dad is from Hong Kong and my mom is from Guangdong, China. However, I relate myself more of like Cantonese Chinese because 5 years ago I moved to Shanghai, China, and I realized China is actually really huge. And depending on which region you're from, it's really specific. So I specifically identify with Cantonese Chinese.
Thanks for sharing that. And Samantha, how does the model minority myth hurt Asian women as a whole?
I can't speak for everybody's experience, but I definitely feel like it boxes a lot of women to be a specific way. You know, it's just like a very simple thing is like Asians are good with numbers. Like that's a stereotype that people have said. And for me, I've never been good with numbers and things like that. And so it was very frustrating to have to feel like I had to do specific pathways that Asians do. And I think what I've noticed is meeting a lot of Asian American women, just like yourself, that have we're multifaceted. We have so many sides to ourselves. We could like math. We could do all these different things. Some of us are outspoken, some of us are not. And that's okay. And I think that's the thing I think model minority hurts us as a whole, is that we have to be 1, 2, 3, like pick your 3 of what you can embody. And I just believe that, Asian American women, we are so much more. We are complex. We have a lot of thoughts, emotions, and all those different things that really make up our identity. And so I think that's where the model minority myth hurts us as a whole.
Thanks for sharing that. And that's so true. And each Asian culture has their own model minority myth that they have to deal with as well. It's like Chinese women, you're only told to be a housewife or be a doctor or a lawyer. If you're Filipino, everyone thinks you're a nurse. So it's, all these things really hurt us because we're actually multifaceted. And I showcase that on the podcast. I mean, I've interviewed over 700 Asian women who've done amazing things, like careers I never thought was possible. And so this really showcases us as more than just our model minority myth. And so thanks for sharing that. And why is creating a stronger representation of Asian women so important for you?
I think because, and again, I only speak from my own experiences. Like I always talk about my childhood and how I always felt like I didn't find spaces that I was able to be in and felt comfortable in. And so I think it's really important, when I was a kid, for example, I would read these books called Chicken Noodle Soup for the Soul by Jack Canfield, and reading about other people's stories and reading about wow, if I had read someone that was similar to me, who's cooking, Asian woman, totally going this non-traditional route, I could be like, whoa, that's a person that's already paved the way for me to do it. And so I didn't see that for myself. I saw a lot of Asian American men in the cooking industry, like Yan Can Cook, Ming, all these different people, but I never saw that for myself. So I think it's really important that we talk about these stories so that someone younger, 10 years from now, fast forward, could be like, yo, I see somebody's doing that and I'm going to run towards that lane. So that is why I think it's really important.
Thanks for sharing that. And I love that. It's so true, right? Growing up, I never saw anybody on TV that was Asian, or, you had just one Asian person that represented all of us. And we really definitely need more representation. And I like what you mentioned, it's the same thing that I want. I just want future generations to realize what's possible for someone is possible for yourself. And it only takes one person to realize that, right? Like all you needed was one female Asian chef to realize like I can make my own cookbook if she was able to do it. And so I really love that. And how does it feel being that representation for so many Asian women in the world?
Well, that's a loaded one. I always think of it like, like you said, it's just one person. My intention is always to not really like think, and I think I think it's really scary for me to think when I'm like, oh, I'm representing Asian American women. I think like I'm giving other people other outlets to look into, like not just, you have to be a specific way, but there are many different ways. Like I don't just cook. I do a lot of different things outside of work. I mean, outside of, cooking, I do a lot of different things. I have a lot of different passions. And I think it's really important for people to be able to see that and be able to point to that and be like, you know what, I can do this, and that. And I think that's the most important.
Thanks for sharing that. And can you share one reason as to why every Asian woman needs to read this book?
Simply for what we just talked about, because there's a lot of people in different industries, different backgrounds, different stories. And you know what? I think a lot of the book is what we're talking about is kind of the struggles that made us the women we are today. And I think it's really important that we talk about those different things, because a lot of times people only talk about people when they come up or when they're able to do a book or things like that. And I think it's really important to inspire other people, be like, hey, I've been in your shoes too, and we can all rise up together. And I think that's one of the reasons, if anything, just read our struggles and relate to us and make your own story. Everybody, I believe it's not just us. There's so many of other women that could be on this book. You know what I'm saying? So definitely read about our stories, connect, and get inspired.
Thanks for sharing that. And Samantha, what can readers gain from reading your story?
So I think the readers are going to be able to gain a new perspective, as we were talking about earlier about the model minority myth. I think people need to see more people who are doing different things and be able to see like, whoa, like if you read my story, I talk about my childhood and how I've always been connected and had this affinity for food. It was always something that I quit. I did a lot of different activities growing up. Cooking was one of them, and I sucked at it in the beginning. But I never gave up because I just loved it so much. And I think if someone read that and is actually maybe thinking like they want to go into that route, they might be able to connect that and be like, whoa, like her passion took her this far, so can mine. And so that's what I'm hoping readers can gain from the story.
Thanks for sharing that. I love how you mentioned like you sucked at first, right? Like you didn't know how to cook, but you just kept at it, right? And I think people forget to realize like in the beginning we will suck, right? And sometimes we feel like we're not meant for it, but if you keep going and if you really want to pursue it, you're going to find a way to do it. And I mean, you were on one of the Food Network challenges, right? Because of your love and passion for cooking, and so you never know where it might take you. And Samantha, can you share one boss up tip for our listeners today?
The boss up tip I want to share today is stay in your own lane. And I know in some ways that has a very negative connotation, but it's also because it's been used in a negative connotation to me that I've used it as a way to stride. And what I mean by that is back then, when I started doing all these different things, I've had people, tell me, just stay in your own lane. You said like the model minority myth, like study math, do all these different things, stay in your own lane. And for me, I've used that in a way to think of it like this. Stay in your own lane means go after what you're passionate about, what seems natural, things that you normally tend to lean in, things that you've probably overlooked yourself. Like, if you're good at gardening, like lean into that. Like, you don't know if a business can happen through that. So I always say stay in your own lane, because what happens is when you're so into what you're doing, you're no longer, I'm not looking at Sheena and being like, Sheena's great what she does. I want to do what Sheena does. I'm not going to be looking at somebody else and be like, oh, I want to be this and that. When you stay in your own lane, you only get better and your eyes are focused on one thing and one goal. And so I just really want to encourage other people, stay in your own lane. And that is not a negative thing. It is a great thing.
Thanks for sharing that great tip. And it's so true. Like when we can just learn to focus on ourselves and what we want to do and chase after our dreams, like it makes a huge difference. And I really love that tip that you mentioned. So thanks again. And Samantha, can you share with our listeners where they can pre-order a copy of the Asian Women Who Boss Up book, or even check out your cookbook, or if you have any social media links you want to share as well?
So if you would like to pre-order Asian women who boss up. You can also connect with me on my website at samtillymuey.wordpress.com, or you can connect with me on Instagram at Sammy Eats. But yes, check us out.
Thanks for sharing that. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Samantha, you can also head on over to thetaoofselfconfidence.com and search for Samantha's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And I really just want to thank Samantha today for taking the time to share her wisdom and her excitement for the book and a little bit about her story. So thank you so much, Samantha.
Thank you so much, Sheena, for having me. And thank you for all that you're doing for Asian American women, or just Asian women in general.
Thank you also. And before we sign off, I just want to have a shout out to The Thought Card, which is a podcast about learning of personal finance, building wealth, and financial freedom. So if that's something you want to be checking out, feel free to check that. The Thought Card is the name. And tune in for another new episode of another amazing Asian woman who boss up author who's also going to share her wisdom and her excitement for the book. So talk to you soon and check out the next episode, or be on the lookout for the next episode. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of The Tao of Self-Confidence. You can order your copy of Asian Women Who Boss Up book by visiting our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits.